All tenses with the verb read. Present simple. I read, you read, she reads, he reads, it reads, we read, they read. I don't read, you don't read, she doesn't read, he doesn't read, it doesn't read, we don't read, they don't read. Do I read? Do you read? Does he read? Does she read? Does it read? Do we read? Do they read? Present continuous. I am reading, you are reading, she is reading, he is reading, it is reading, we are reading, they are reading. I am not reading, you are not reading, she is not reading, he is not reading, it is not reading, we are not reading, they are not reading. Am I reading? Are you reading? Is she reading? Is he reading? Is it reading? Are we reading? Are they reading? Present perfect. I have read, you have read, she has read, he has read, it has read, we have read, they have read, I have not read, you have not read, she has not read, he has not read, it has not read, we have not read, they have not read. Have I read? Have you read? Has she read? Has he read? Has it read? Have we read? Have they read? Present perfect continuous. I have been reading for 2 hours. You have been reading for 2 hours. She has been reading for 2 hours. He has been reading for 2 hours. It has been reading for 2 hours. We have been reading for 2 hours. They have been reading for 2 hours. I have not been reading for 2 hours. You have not been reading for 2 hours. She has not been reading for 2 hours. He has not been reading for 2 hours. It has not been reading for 2 hours. We have not been reading for 2 hours. They have not been reading for 2 hours. Have I been reading? Have you been reading? Has she been reading? Has he been reading? Has it been reading? Have we been reading? Have they been reading? Past simple. I read, you read, she read, he read, it read, we read, they read. I didn't read, you didn't read, she didn't read, he didn't read, it didn't read, we didn't read, they didn't read. Did I read? Did you read? Did she read? Did he read? Did it read? Did we read? Did they read? Past continuous. I was reading, you were reading, she was reading, he was reading, it was reading, we were reading, they were reading. I wasn't reading, you weren't reading, she wasn't reading, he wasn't reading, it wasn't reading, we weren't reading, they weren't reading. Was I reading? Were you reading? Was she reading? Was he reading? Was it reading? Were we reading? Were they reading? Past perfect. I had read, you had read, she had read, he had read, it had read, we had read, they had read, I hadn't read, you hadn't read, she hadn't read, he hadn't read, it hadn't read, we hadn't read, they hadn't read. Had I read? Had you read? Had she read? Had he read? Had it read? Had we read? Had they read? Past perfect continuous. I had been reading, you had been reading, she had been reading, he had been reading, it had been reading, we had been reading, they had been reading. I had not been reading. You had not been reading, she had not been reading, he had not been reading, it had not been reading, we had not been reading, they had not been reading. Had I been reading? Had you been reading? Had she been reading? Had he been reading? Had it been reading? Had we been reading? Had they been reading? Future simple. I will read. You will read. She will read. He will read. It will read. We will read. They will read. I will not read. You will not read. She will not read. He will not read. It will not read. We will not read. They will not read. Will I read? Will you read? Will she read? Will he read? Will it read? Will we read? Will they read? Future simple continuous. I will be reading. You will be reading. She will be reading. He will be reading. It will be reading. We will be reading. They will be reading. I will not be reading. You will not be reading. She will not be reading. He will not be reading. It will not be reading. We will not be reading. They will not be reading. Will I be reading? Will you be reading? Will she be reading? Will he be reading? Will it be reading? Will we be reading? Will they be reading? Future perfect. I will have read. You will have read. She will have read. He will have read. It will have read. We will have read. They will have read. I will not have read. You will not have read. She will not have read. He will not have read. It will not have read. We will not have read. They will not have read. Will I have read? Will you have read? Will she have read? Will he have read? Will it have read? Will we have read? Will they have read? Future perfect continuous. I will have been reading. You will have been reading. She will have been reading. He will have been reading. It will have been reading. We will have been reading. They will have been reading. I will not have been reading. You will not have been reading. She will not have been reading. He will not have been reading. It will not have been reading. We will not have been reading. They will not have been reading. Will I have been reading? Will you have been reading? Will she have been reading? Will he have been reading? Will it have been reading? Will we have been reading? Will they have been reading? Present simple, passive. I am red. You are red. She is red. He is red. It is red. We are red. They are red. I am not red. You are not red. She is not red. He is not red. It is not red. We are not red. They are not red. Am I red? Are you red? Is he red? Is she red? Is it red? Are you red? Are we red? Are they red? Present continuous, passive. I am being read. You are being read. She is being read. He is being read. It is being read. We are being read. They are being read. I am not being read. You are not being read. She is not being read. He is not being read. It is not being read. We are not being read. They are not being read. Am I being read? Are you being read? Is she being read? Is it being read? Is it being read? Are we being read? Are they being read? Present perfect, passive. I have been read. You have been read. She has been read. He has been read. It has been read. We have been read. They have been read. I have not been read. You have not been read. She has not been read. He has not been read. It has not been read. We have not been read. They have not been read. Have I been read? Have you been read? Has she been read? Has he been read? Has it been read? Have we been read? Have they been read? Past simple, passive. I was read. You were read. She was read. He was read. It was red. We were red. They were red. I was not red. You were not red. She was not red. He was not red. It was not red. We were not red. They were not red. Was I red? Were you red? Was she red? Was he red? Was it red? Were we red? Were they red? Past continuous, passive. I was being read. You were being read. She was being read. He was being read. It was being read. We were being read. They were being read. I was not being read. You were not being read. She was not being read. He was not being read. It was not being read. We were not being read. They were not being read. Was I being read? Were you being read? Was she being read? Was he being read? Was it being read? Were we being read? Were they being read? Past perfect, passive. I had been read. You had been read. She had been read. He had been read. It had been read. We had been read. They had been read. I had not been read. You had not been read. She had not been read. He had not been read. It had not been read. We had not been read. They had not been read. Had I been read? Had you been read? Had she been read? Had he been read? Had it been read? Had we been read? Had they been read? Future simple, passive. I will be read, you will be read, she will be read, he will be read, it will be read, we will be read, they will be read. I will not be read, you will not be read, she will not be read, he will not be read, it will not be read, we will not be read, they will not be read. Will I be read? Will you be read? Will she be read? Will he be read? Will it be read? Will we be read? Will they be read? Future perfect, passive. I will have been read. You will have been read. She will have been read. He will have been read. It will have been read. We will have been read. They will have been read. I will not have been read. You will not have been read. She will not have been read. He will not have been read. It will not have been read. We will not have been read. They will not have been read. Will I have been read? Will you have been read? Will she have been read? Will he have been read? Will it have been read? Will we have been read? Will they have been read? Oh my God, that's all for today. See you soon. Bye-bye.